The original Blade Runner is not a movie I grew up with. In fact, I only saw it for the first time just last year. But I rewatched it again this week leading up to 2049 because it's a movie that a lot of people love. People talk about Blade Runner constantly, one of the most inspirational movies in sci-fi, I think. To me, the first time I watched it, I didn't get it. I mean, I understood, I felt like everything that was happening, and like I didn't feel like I was missing out on the plot, but it just didn't grab me. So, rewatching it, I was going in hoping to love it a little bit more, and, well, let's get into it. Well, first off, I think the thing that stands out the most is the production design. The way that they inhabited that world, the way they made it look, the lenses that they used to shoot everything, it's one of the most beautiful movies I've seen. And I can appreciate that both on the first watch and now, even more now. So, it's definitely visually one of the greatest things I've ever seen. I think that pacing of the movie was my biggest struggle the first time through. It's a very slow movie that takes time with its characters. It's not like Star Wars or other sci-fi movies where it's like explosion, explosion, fight, you know, stuff like that. But it's very slow and methodical the way that they approach it. And that was kind of off-putting the first time I saw it. Honestly, I was bored. This time, though, I learned to appreciate it a little bit more. I think the first 30 minutes or so is very interesting, that kind of detective story, and I feel like it kind of stops being a detective story after a while. Like, I was wanting it to go more into that detective kind of plot line because I enjoy those, but it kind of drags on in that second act, and it comes a little bit more of an action-y movie at the end. Like I said, in that second act, it drags on for a while. There's like a 5 or so minute long scene of Harrison Ford trying to use voice commands to zoom in on a picture. And oddly enough, this was made in 1982. It's very accurate about how voice commands work and how much you have to restate stuff to get what you actually want. But it just drags on so long, and the whole revelation that scene's building to is the identity of someone that you can see in this photo, and then it's like, well, we don't really recognize her. I mean, you kind of see her in a glimpse, like it's one of the replicants that escaped that he's after, and you kind of see her in like a glimpse earlier, but you don't really see her enough to recognize her, so that whole revelation is just like, oh, it's some woman, and then he goes after her, and you're like, oh, okay, that's what it was. But it just kind of, it seems like they built up a lot to like this big reveal there in that scene, and it's like, okay, I think I saw her a second earlier. In the photo, she's fuzzy, she just looks like a blonde woman. However, at other times, with that slow pacing in the second act, I really enjoy it. Like, there's this great scene, it's the second time that Rachel and Decker are in his apartment. It turns into kind of a rapey romance scene. It's supposed to be romance, but it comes across really, like, sexual assaulty. But everything leading up to that I liked. Besides that part, that's when it kind of lost me a little. But everything leading up to that, I mean, it's a long, drawn-out, maybe 5 to 10 minutes of just them sitting in mostly silence, a couple words every now and then. Not always, like sometimes it's questions that she asks that don't even get answered. But it takes a long time, and it kind of, they spend so much time with Rachel there, and it's kind of her processing the fact that she's a replicant, kind of grappling with what is humanity, and that's kind of the theological question that is the through line through this entire movie. And that's something that it seems kind of, you know, dated now. Like, it seems like, oh, well, we've seen that before. I've seen things like Ghost in the Shell or Ex Machina or The Matrix even, stuff like that, that Blade Runner inspired. But that second time going through, I was like, well, this is the first time we saw it, so I really learned to appreciate it this second viewing a little bit more. The first viewing, I mean, it was only a year ago, but even then I feel like I was just kind of passively watching it. I wasn't as into it as I should have been. I wasn't paying as much attention to every little shot that matters. Harrison Ford gives a good performance again. It's kind of a variation of every character that he played in the 80s. Like, it was kind of his Han Solo, Indiana Jones character. But this one was a lot more understated. He's not as sarcastic and witty, although he has his moments. But it's a little more understated, which I appreciate. In fact, all the performances in the film can be described as understated. It's a very real feeling world. It's not fantastical, really. I mean, visually it is, but everything else, like, it's a grounded world. The only exception would be Rutger Hauer and Pris, Daryl Hannah's character. I feel like they're a little cartoony, but they're kind of supposed to be, because they know that they're replicants, and they're kind of off to find answers, and so they have to kind of, like, Daryl Hannah especially, like, she gets kind of crazy weird at times, but at the same time, she, like, her goal in the movie is trying to seduce this guy in order to kind of get him to lead them to the person that they're after. And Rutger Hauer, like I said, he can be a little cartoony at times, only with how long his monologues and whatnot are, and then at the end, he kind of just turns into Michael Myers. He kind of just turns into this unstoppable force. And that's the thing that I feel like I kind of lose a little bit of, like, interest in, is the end, where it's like he's punching through walls and stuff and, like, grabbing Harrison Ford's fingers and breaking them, and it just seems almost just like a stereotypical horror or, like, unstoppable villain ending fight. And I feel like, honestly, with how the movie was leading up, I feel like it would have been almost even better if they just had a sit-down conversation and that was the finale of the movie. Like, it sounds boring, but at the same time, it's like, I feel like that would be more interesting. Like, all of Rutger Hauer's dialogue is so, like, poignant, and I've heard that Rutger Hauer actually kind of created all of his own monologues once he got his character, and if that's true, then he did a great job. But I feel like at the end, they kind of just, like, distill it down to the basic, like, he's the good guy, he's the bad guy, and they kind of have a twist at that towards the end, how that fight ends, but it's just kind of, like, been there, done that, even up to that. Like, I feel like that's the one part of the movie that wasn't new and inspiring to other people. Like, it was just kind of like, oh, well, that's how horror movies end, you know? There's a final showdown with the unstoppable villain and the guy who's trying to escape / kill him. Now, the very end of the movie is something that people have theorized about for a long time, and it depends on what cut of the movie you watched. I've only seen the final cut of the movie, I should say, so a lot of this stuff might change depending. I'm not sure how different things like the theatrical cut and the director's cut are. I know in the theatrical cut there's like the bad narration that I've heard clips of, and I'm glad I didn't watch that cut. But at the very end of the final cut, at least, they have him picking up this origami unicorn that was left to him by that fellow Blade Runner that he works with, and it seems like, I know people theorize, like, is Decker a replicant? To me, my viewing of the final cut, it seems almost unquestionable that he is a replicant. Like, I think it's only in this cut as well where he has the dream about the unicorn. I think it might have been in the director's cut, actually. But he has that dream about the unicorn, and he never talks to that about anyone, like he just saw a unicorn. But all of a sudden, he has that origami unicorn, and they know that they can implant memories. So to me, it seems fairly obvious that Decker is a replicant from that. But like, I can't really go the other way, and I know Harrison Ford himself has even debunked it, saying, no, Decker's not a replicant. And like, obviously we're going to get answers in a day whenever 2049 comes out. I'm sure that they're going to answer whether or not he's a replicant or not. If so, he's definitely has that longer than 4-year lifespan, because it's been 35 years now. So I guess there's no real use in theorizing about it when we're going to have a definitive answer in a day. So I guess I'll cut it off there, but I could go on. So overall, I think the rewatch helped a lot, actually. I learned to appreciate it a little bit more. The first time I was just slow, and I thought it was going to be more of a detective story, and it really isn't. I kind of would have preferred that then, but I really appreciate what they did do with it now and how inspiring that was to all the filmmakers. I don't have that nostalgia for it still. Hopefully I'll have that for 2049. Hopefully, I've been hearing everything coming out about it is that it might even be better than the first one. But this first one I do like. I think it's a good movie. I don't love it, but I think it's a good movie. So I'd give it an 8 out of 10. But please subscribe and stick around, because in a day or so, I'm going to have a review out for 2049. Anyway, what did you guys think? Leave a like down below and a comment letting me know what you thought about the movie. And I'd like to see what your opinions were and what everyone's looking forward to in 2049. But I'll see you tomorrow with a review for that.
Questions? I just do eyes. Just genetic design. Just eyes.